Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our very first webinar. Joining me today is Scott Waddell, fellow director and CFO and company secretary.
Hello all.
As this is our first webinar, what we plan to do is take you through our presentation, the presentation that was lodged on the ASX yesterday, which is largely an update on what we've achieved so far, but more importantly, what we've got ahead of ourselves moving forward. Everyone is naturally muted, but what we would appreciate is if you have any questions, if you could send them in, and we'll address those questions when we finish the presentation. So bear with us, and we'll take you through an update on where Metallica Minerals is at in relation to the development of what we consider a very exciting Silica sand project in Cape Flattery in Queensland. It's important to note that obviously not everyone's going to read the disclaimer, but we will make some statements about what we plan to do in the future. Naturally, we qualify everything that we wanting to achieve. There's much work to be done, much drilling to be done, more agreements to be negotiated with key stakeholders, and naturally quite a bit of work to take place before we head into aspirational timing to put this project, hopefully one day, into production. Many of you have probably read widely that the world is running out of high-quality silica sand. There are a number of other ASX companies who are slightly more advanced than us. It is a common theme. And, as much as we put newspaper headlines on the screen here, judging by the communication that we're receiving from interested parties from around the world, the shortage is real, the demand is real, and the beauty of where we're located is that Cape Flattery is such a highly regarded and well-respected product, with Mitsubishi having been mining there for over 50 years and exporting predominantly to Asia. A Cape Flattery product is extremely well known, and we look forward to joining that community in the coming years. So what are the highlights so far? Well, we're very proud that we own it 100%. No joint venture partners. We are in total control. I've already mentioned the demand. The drilling campaign that we completed late last year has delivered a JORC resource of 38 million tonne, and I'll come back to that because we plan to drill in June to expand that significantly, probably more so with the category of JORC resource that we plan to achieve. On the bottom left-hand corner, a key point of difference, and we do stress this quite often in presentations and discussions, it is very, very important in Queensland to be located within a current port or current designated port boundary, and we'll spend a bit of time on that shortly. We're very pleased in the last couple of weeks to have gone out with our rights issue. The target was $4.9 million. When that started, we really didn't have a feel for how that would go. We were confident that existing shareholders would contribute, which they did, and we're grateful for that continued support. But there was a shortfall, but the demand for that shortfall was significant. So we as a board made the decision to complete a placement on top of the shortfall, and last week we banked $7 million. So that puts us in a very good position for the next 12 months. So as we sit here today, just over 550 million shares on issue, and of course we have 141 million options that are currently being traded. So hopefully we might have finished the day slightly up on the 2.8 cents when we prepared this schedule. Our market cap around the $15 to $16 million mark. There's a table there with our top 4 shareholders. certainly pleased to have the Flattery family office come on the register. And, as many of you well and truly know, they have an interest in other silica sand companies. So they're very much believers in the future for this as an industry in Australia. If you're joining us for the first time, just a brief geography lesson. From Cairns to Cape Flattery, if the crow was to fly directly, it's about 220 kilometres. So just north of Cooktown and near the town of Hopevale. So that is our entire focus. But as we've disclosed to the market since we've put out a new strategy last year, we are looking at additional projects. We continue to look for some. We've been quite open with our desire for copper gold, but then again, so many other people are looking for copper gold. We're not going to do a deal that would not be in the interests of our shareholders, and certainly not a deal that would take away any of the focus of what we need to achieve and will achieve at Cape Flattery. The most important graphic on that slide is our map to the right. The red area is our entire EPM, and within that area we have three key areas of focus. The shaded one is where we are concentrating at the moment. When we drill in June, we may do some work over in the far left-hand side in that other area, but we need to assess access. And if we do get in there, it'll probably be a hand augering program, which is what we did in our key area of focus over 12 months ago. We are surrounded in some way or in a large way by Mitsubishi's mining lease. Importantly, they do not surround our key area of focus. And the map will show you where their jetty is. We also have a map where we plan to potentially build a jetty. And so we'll come back to that a little bit later.
And just the blue outline on the water shows a designated port area, the Flattery port. So we're well within that port boundary, which is, as Theo said, a very positive situation for the project to be in.
Thanks, Scott. The picture on the left just gives you an idea of the terrain. At the drilling we completed late last year, we drilled on those tracks. So that track you can see there, that's where we drilled. For one of the Aboriginal corporations, we are their very first resource company. They're doing having a partnership with, so they were getting their heads around the process of leading into further drilling and ultimately one day hopefully constructing a mine. I'm pleased to say that the agreements we've got in place, they're very comfortable with us going off track and drilling in those areas. As I said before, we're currently sitting on a JORC resource of just over 38 million tonne. The map on the right, 82 holes have been identified for the drilling campaign that we will undertake in June. We will need to complete a cultural heritage program probably late May, where the two Aboriginal corporations representatives will, with an archaeologist, will review the land, look for any sensitive cultural aspects, and that will allow us then to drill with confidence. For those of you who heard presentations before, apologies for stressing what is a significant competitive advantage and logistical advantage with our project. The Queensland Government has legislation that does not allow companies to build jetties or ports outside designated port areas in Queensland anywhere near the Great Barrier Reef. So this would be a challenge to other companies. We're in the fortunate position to be able to potentially build this jetty 800 metres from what we hope is to be the location of our mining operation. It is not surrounded by any other mining lease. we have complete access to that beach. And it's been an interesting discussion process with the two Aboriginal corporations, and we also engage with Ports North, Queensland government-owned corporation that owns the port. The two Aboriginal corporations and Ports North individually, separately, suggested to us that is the best location for a jetty. Yes, we had already identified it ourselves, but it's important to know that all three groups were supportive. Ports North in particular, because they have identified two swing basins, probably just under 2 kilometres away, where the larger ships can sit and the barges can then leave our jetty, head out to the ships and load the sand onto ships up to a Panamax size vessel. So we can't stress, yes, there'll be a capital cost for the jetty. We've got work to do on that, but to control our destiny and have that in our kit bag is a benefit. We haven't ruled out having a chat to Mitsubishi because they have their established jetty, but from what we understand about their plans to expand production and the capacity that, or the lack of capacity they have, it's highly unlikely that we would get an invitation to use that.
I think the other factor there as well is that transshipment has in fact taken place at this location before. When Mitsubishi started their operation in the 60s and 70s, they used transshipment from a location not far away from our proposed jetty. And there's already 2 designated swing basins where we could load onto the ocean-going vessel from our barges, which are about 2 kilometres from this barge loading location. So, as Theo mentioned, we have very excellent logistics of a short distance between our mine and the jetty, and then a short distance between the jetty and where we load the ocean-going vessel.
It's important as we, as a aspiring mining company, head up to Cape Flattery, that we've become part of the local community in a very short space of time. We've already provided employment opportunities for the activities that we've undertaken, and obviously plan to with the drilling in June. But it was important to brief the Aboriginal groups on what our plans were, albeit aspirational, albeit early days, but give them a very clear understanding of what we wanted to achieve. And I'm pleased to say that both groups are supportive of the project. Yes, we've got some way to go before they get really excited, but they do want to see more employment opportunities, and they do want to see prosperity into their town and their region. So it was important for us to get cultural heritage agreements signed. They are agreements that allow us to drill for this campaign coming up in June. So I want to stress that later on this year, we will sit down with those groups again. We'll have a greater understanding of the resource. We'll have a greater understanding of a potential location for operations. And so we'll be negotiating additional cultural heritage agreements. We'll also be negotiating commercial agreements for which they, not only through employment opportunities, but would be seeking a level of compensation, quite possibly a royalty for us to operate a silica sand mine in the future. So we sit here today pleased with the capital raise, pleased that the drilling's about to start, and most importantly, very excited about the future. So what does that entail? Well, to put it frankly, a hell of a lot of work. It's daunting at times, it's exciting, but it's achievable. So over the next 6 months, we'll be finishing the metallurgical test work, and those parties from around the world that are keen to see the product that we will be able to offer are keenly awaiting us to report those results, and hopefully they're imminent or within the month. We will resume our environmental studies. We completed some wet season flora and fauna in March, so that team will probably head up to Cape Flattery in June to start some dry season studies. We're currently working on the scoping study. For those who've listened in on previous discussions, there's a little bit of slippage, so it's probably 3 to 4 weeks away. So apologise for that. Mentioned the drilling, continued community engagement. We'll be lodging a mining lease application in within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we hope. That entails having pre-lodgement meetings with relevant government departments. As I mentioned, cultural heritage agreements and commercial agreements with the traditional landowners. We've already had some very early preliminary discussions with potential offtake partners. Some of them were under the impression that we could put some of our product on a ship in the next 2 to 3 months. That's how keen they are. So we'll continue those discussions. We'll finalise our studies on the best infrastructure solution, and it is probably going to be our own jetty. But as I said, we haven't ruled out talking to Mitsubishi. And of course, come mid-year, we'll kick off our pre-feasibility study and hope to have that completed early in Q4 of this year. So there's a lot of activities to be undertaken. Just to give you an idea of the timelines, yes, we've only taken you out to 2022. If we can achieve all that, it means we've got an exciting 2023 ahead of ourselves. I should stress that those timeframes will be impacted quite significantly on how we go with the Department of Environment in Queensland. We're quietly confident of having to go through an EA process and not a full environmental impact statement. I should stress that the federal government will have a role in that process as well. So we will be starting those discussions when we've completed the next environmental work in June, July. Lastly, we look forward to the day where we don't put up a slide like this that says that we're really good value where we are and we're cheap, but the market is what the market is. So we aspire to get to the levels that other companies, you've got the Western Australian companies of VRX and Perpetual, particularly VRX with a very large resource. They've got significant kilometres to travel to get their product on a ship, but and we certainly we watch Diatreme closely, being in the same region. So we believe there's plenty of scope for us as a management team to increase shareholder value. We are cashed up. A lot of work is about to happen, and I'm pleased that we've got a commodity that the world is keenly after. For those of you who saw this presentation on the ASX yesterday, we're going to, we've got a brand. We've got a brand not for Metallica, but for the subsidiary company that owns this project. As I said before, there is so much value in the name Cape Flattery. This is the only logo that people are going to see very soon up in Hopevale and Cooktown and Cairns. Our team will be wearing this logo. When we start buying vehicles, they'll have this logo on it. Yes, we are a Metallica company, but we want the world knowing that there's this entity in Australia called Cape Flattery Silica. So thank you for listening. We noticed there's a few questions that have popped up, so we'll get them on the screen. First, okay, will the Flatterys, through their family office, be represented on the board? No. So they have not asked for that based on this investment. We note that they do have a representative on the Diatreme board, but no, that hasn't come up. The question's been asked, have the TLOs, or has the TLO approval been given for the proposed site? No, it hasn't. We will come up with a definitive mine plan later in the year, and we'll sit down with the groups and talk to them about the location, and that'll be part of, I guess, the conduct and compensation agreement, and also probably a cultural heritage aspect as well. Someone's asked, isn't Diatreme also planning transshipment in the designated port area? No, they're not. We understand, Scott, that their key focus is a location called Knob Point, and that is outside the designated port area. And so hence there will be no interaction with our infrastructure plans.
I think they might have had a plan of barging from Knob Point to the designated port area, about 42 kilometres, and then loading the ocean-going vessels from the designated swing basin. There's obviously two, so from one of those two. But I'm not aware of any updated Diatreme's plans at the moment.
Another question here, will the next drilling program result in proven probable reserves? Our target has a big M for measured on it. So we certainly want to elevate the indicated level of the resource, but we expect to achieve measured.
The proven probable will most likely come after we've completed the pre-feasibility study, which is obviously, as Theo said, Q3, Q4 this year. So later in the year, we hope we'll be having some proven and probable all being well.
I'm looking at my phone because we've had a question emailed in. Question is, what sort of timelines would you expect when submitting samples to the labs, considering that Australia-wide there are huge delays in getting results back? When our bags of sand came down south to Brisbane to Robbins, it was originally going to be about a 10-week program. We actually extended that to do some more testing of the sand, only because when we start talking to offtake partners, we want to give them every opportunity to assess product that will be processed at Cape Flattery, and in time a product that will be processed somewhere in Asia. So we won't have achieved the acid leaching processing for this metallurgy report, but we added a couple of components. We discovered some brown sand whose attributes suggest, if I could put it this way, may wash up and be usable. So we're doing a bit of testing of sand that, to the naked eye is very brown, but actually could become a product. So the question about the labs is relevant. When we complete the drilling in June, naturally those bags of sand will come down to Robbins again, and they will be assessed as well. So the knowledge we get from this metallurgy program, we would hope that we can stick to a 10-week program, the next batch of sand.